Hello everyone, and welcome to our first Facebook Live session together. My name is Keith Price, and I am honored to be coming to you this afternoon as the new Superintendent of Georgetown County School District. I regret that we're unable to do this in person. When we first began talking about opportunities to get out and meet the community, we had planned to do community forums at the different high schools to give everyone a chance to come out, for me to meet you and for you to meet me. Unfortunately, during these current times, public gatherings of large groups are not necessarily in the best interest of everyone's health and safety. So we will be coming back with a plan to do that in the future whenever it's safe to do so. I wanted to come to you today with this. Number one, to introduce myself to you and let you know how much I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone, getting out and meeting folks in the community, and hearing about all the things that you'd like to share about our wonderful school district. I'd also like to take this time to share with you and to give you an update about our efforts so far in our Reopening Schools Task Force. As many of you may already know, the State Department of Education released their Accelerate Ed Task Force final report this past Monday, and our team has already begun looking into that and planning accordingly. I've had the opportunity already to meet different folks throughout our district office building, as well as all the principals from all of our schools. I've been fortunate enough to meet some of the community members already, either in a person-to-person or in a virtual type of meeting. So everyone has been so warm and welcoming, and I look forward to getting out to meet more people as time goes on. But at this time, what I'd like to do is to share with you a presentation to give you an update about where we are with reopening. Now, please know that what we will not be sharing tonight is in no way a final report about what it will look like in August. We're beginning the planning phases just as this final report has been released. We're starting to get our game plan together now, and I'll go through that in just a moment. And what I'd like to share with you is, unfortunately, since our announcement about the Facebook Live session, we've had to regroup. Unfortunately, due to some exposures that I had last week, I'm now in a situation where I need to self-isolate for everyone's safety. So far, no symptoms, but just playing it safe. So rather than coming to you live, what I have is a recorded session that's being aired through our Facebook Live session. But what I can tell you is that we've got our team standing by that's going to be monitoring the chat feature. So as we go through our presentation, if you have questions, if you will just drop those into the chat feature, one of our team members will be prepared to respond to your questions. So again, I apologize for the inconvenience, but thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to meeting everyone really, really soon. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for tuning in. I'm going to begin our presentation now to give you an update of our efforts to prepare for our Reopening Schools initiative so that we'll know what school will look like in August. So far, what we've done is we've established our Reopening Schools Task Force, and our task force is being chaired by Mr. Alan Walters, who's our Executive Director for Safety and Risk Management. Mr. Walters' involvement in this process has already proved to be very beneficial. He has most recently served on the state's task force for Accelerate Ed and their Reopening Schools initiative. So his involvement with that is assisting us in our efforts here for our local plan in a great way. We have two subcommittees that we have formed. One that will focus on instruction and what teaching and learning will look like whenever we return in August, and one who will be focusing on operations and logistics. Mr. John Tester, Assistant Superintendent for Schools and Support Services, will chair the subcommittee for instruction, and Mr. Tyrone Davis, Assistant Superintendent for Operations and Logistics, will chair our operations subcommittee. As you can see, we have a wide variety of participation in our task force, everything from school principals and school level personnel to students, nurses, counselors, food service employees, transportation representatives. We have representatives from our school board as well as our district office staff who are all serving on our task force. In addition to that, and we had a meeting earlier this week with our principals. One of the things that we're encouraging them to do is to begin forming their own school level site-based reopening schools task force. So they will be working with the plan that comes from the state, as well as the plan that comes from the district level, to put initiatives and procedures in place for their specific school site. Our guide through this work, we're going to have two main sources to guide our work. One is that document that we've referenced already, the final report from the Accelerate Ed Task Force. And if you're interested in taking a look at that report, it can be found on their website at dedicationtoeducation.com. In addition to that, we're also going to be using the feedback from our parent and employee surveys. Those went out last week, and if you haven't had a chance to respond to those, you still have time. We're asking everyone to get your responses to those results in by the end of this week so that your input can be considered for our efforts moving forward. Our items for discussion, what we're going to be talking about with these task force meetings. First is in-person and e-learning instructional models. Our goal going into this is to have an in-person plan, but also to have e-learning and remote learning options available. We're interested to see what our survey feedback tells us about your opinions about those things so that we can plan accordingly. In addition, what we've got to also remember is that just like it came out of nowhere back in March when we went from in-person school to e-learning and remote learning overnight, we have to be prepared in case that same thing were to happen again. So part of this will be focusing on best practices, but also refining the plan that we had in place last spring so that it can better serve our students and our employees as we move forward. Food services will also have to be discussed, and how meals will be provided and in what way and in what location they'll be provided for our students when we return to school. Bus transportation, we'll also have to work through our plans with that as well. Right now, the numbers that we've got to go by from the final report is that buses can run at 50% capacity. So we'll have to put procedures in place to figure out how our routes will look and how our seating charts will look on our buses. Health and safety procedures for students and employees, keeping in mind social distancing, hand sanitizing, cleaning, all of those details have to be put into place. We're also going to be looking at special education services that need to be provided to our students. Many of those require hands-on or in-person services, so we've got to get our plan together for that. Also, we have to provide instructional resources for our English learners, and a lot of that is done in person as well. In addition, as you know, we're about to begin phase 1 of reentry for our student athletes and their participation, but we know from the documents that have been released by the South Carolina High School League that phase 2 and phase 3 are also in discussions. So we want to be ready whenever those phases come around, and these would also apply to things like marching band and JROTC cadets and any other student group that would require in-person attendance on campus throughout our summer. And then the last thing that we're going to be reviewing is our school year start date and how the current state of affairs may play a role in our scheduled start date. Again, with our surveys, please be sure to respond to the survey that went out last week by the close of the window, which is this Friday, June 26th. Our timeline. As I mentioned before, our task force leaders began meeting last week to get the game plan rolling. Our principals participated in a Zoom meeting this past Monday to begin assembling their site-based team to begin their specific planning discussions. Meetings are scheduled to begin this week to begin reviewing the Accelerate Ed final report that was released on Monday, and we'll continue meetings next week using results from our surveys. The goal is to have a draft plan presented to the school board during the week of July 20th, and then to share the plan with our community by the end of that week. The recommendation from the Accelerate Ed Task Force is to have your plan ready to be shared 20 days prior to the first day of school, and our plan is to make sure we meet that recommendation, if not even earlier. I know that July 20th seems like a long ways away, but with all the work that needs to be done, that time will fly by pretty quickly. So our team and our task force will be moving swiftly to get our plan drafted and ready to communicate. The goals of our task force. Going into this, our goals are to provide options to our board and our community that include in-person instruction with an e-learning option. We know that the best practices are found and the best learning environments exist whenever our teachers are able to work directly with our students. But we also know that with the state of affairs with COVID-19, not everyone is able to return to an in-person environment. So we want to make sure that we have that e-learning option available also. We'll have our in-person instructional plan that will include precautions and measures to mitigate risk and ensure safety for students and employees. As we prepare to move back to our new normal, or I'm not going to say back to the old normal, because I don't know that it'll ever quite be the way that it once was, but with our new normal, we have to put safety measures in place. That will be a driving factor in all that we do, regardless of which task force subcommittee is meeting. Safety for students and employees will be of paramount importance. Our other goals are to adhere to the guidance provided by the Accelerated Ed Task Force and the guidelines provided by DHEC and the Center for Disease Control. And they are still working on specific guidelines for schools and classrooms, and we will be updating our work as those results are released. And then we'll also create a contingency plan in case we must return to a complete e-learning format. We want to be prepared for that differently this go around in case we have to do that, rather than how we were whenever things came to a halt back in March. Our focus for professional development and staff training this summer, and working with our teaching and learning team and our academic staff, we've really focused on 3 areas that we're going to give our attention to. One is best practices for e-learning instruction, so that we can equip our teachers with best practices so that they can deliver a top-notch quality product for our students and our parents. Next are those safety precautions and new procedures that are going to be in place in our schools. We need everyone to be familiar with those and ready to enforce them, and also to model and lead by example. And then finally, focusing on our multi-tiered system of supports. And there are 2 areas that we're going to focus on there. One is social emotional assistance for students and employees. Many of our students and many of our employees have been dealing with a great deal and a wide variety of issues since school closed back in March, and our environment has kind of closed down. And so there are a wide variety of things that folks have been able or have had to encounter and try to work through. And we want to make sure that we give the proper support to those things for our employees and our students, so then we can turn our focus back to learning. But that we can't overlook the social emotional assistance needs that we're going to have. And in addition to that is identifying the academic support for students who've demonstrated learning gaps and struggles since schools closed. We recognize that while e-learning is a nice option, it's not optimal for all of our learners. And some of our students have struggled with that for a variety of different reasons. And we want to make sure that we provide the appropriate support for those students who've demonstrated some challenges since we moved to that format back in March. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in and joining us for our overview, and we look forward to bringing a good plan to you as quickly as we possibly can. And with that said, I think it's safe to assume that there's probably not going to be one plan that's going to make everyone happy. I know that there are a lot of different opinions out there. The early results from our surveys are already showing us that there's a wide variety of opinions about what schools should look like when we return in August. But all of those are going to be taken into consideration. We're going to use all of that input to put together the best plan that we possibly can put together for you. Right now, on this day, there's probably still a lot more questions than we have answers for. But again, if you have not had a chance to log your questions into the chat, please feel free to do that. We'll be collecting those, and we will create an FAQ document. We're creating a place on our website to house all of our information related to COVID-19 and our Restarting Schools Task Force. So we'll collect your questions because your questions may be the same as others. And we'll make sure that we get a response back to you if we can provide one, but we'll also collect that and have it posted in case others may visit with the same questions. So again, thank you for joining in and tuning in tonight. And I look forward to meeting you all very soon. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.